The story of our progress as humans can be told through a series of revolutions our species has gone through. Every revolution has given us humans a new direction. It has changed the course of our progress and has determined where our civilization is heading next. Some revolutions were pure work of nature. They occurred naturally, like the cognitive revolution, which brought significant changes in the human brain and gave us the ability to be imaginative and creative. Some revolutions occurred because of the collaboration between humans and nature, like agricultural, scientific, and later the industrial revolution that brought significant changes in the way we humans live. Then there are the revolutions that we humans bring in order to forcibly overthrow a government or social order in favor of a new system. As the third US President Thomas Jefferson puts it, every generation needs a revolution. Of course it does, because in every generation we face new challenges and problems that cannot be solved by the existing old system. For some people like Vladimir Lenin and Che Guevara, revolution was to be achieved by force and through violence. For people like Mahatma Gandhi and Martin Luther King Jr., it was to be achieved peacefully. There can be zillion ways to bring revolution. The point here is that studying them is important if you want to understand the history of mankind. Our history books are full of such revolutionary events. Organized groups of people who fought with their lives to replace the existing ruling system with another. Many turned out to be failures, but occasionally some resulted in triumphant success. They shaped and influenced not only one country but several, their influence sometimes crossing continents. Hi guys, myself Prateek and you are watching Eclectic. Here we talk about our past, present and future, and in this video I present to you the 5 most influential political revolutions that made a long-lasting impact on the world. Number 1. The Haitian Revolution. In the year 1492, Christopher Columbus discovered an island in the Caribbean Sea. He named it Hispaniola, meaning Little Spain. With him, he brought the brutal colonization that lasted for more than 3 centuries. First, the Spanish enslaved the natives of the island and forced them to mine gold. After falling victim to the horrific working conditions and European diseases, the island's people were virtually wiped out by the end of the 16th century. Once the gold mines were empty, Spaniards were no longer interested in the island and eventually conceded it to the French. The French called it Saint Domingue. Now it was their turn to figure out ways to exploit the island even further. As the natives of the island were already wiped out by the Spanish, France decided to import thousands of slaves from the nearby Caribbean islands and Africa to start sugar plantations. In the 18th century, Saint Domingue became the most valuable colony in the West Indies and possibly in the world. It produced 80% of Europe's sugar, 60% of its coffee, and it was home to more slaves than any place except Brazil. The livelihood of 1 million of the approximately 25 million people who lived in France in 1789 depended directly upon the agricultural imports from Saint Domingue, and several million indirectly depended upon the trade from the colony to maintain their standard of living. All of this prosperity was achieved by working slaves to death. By this time, the population of Saint Domingue was divided into 4 groups. Whites who owned or managed plantations, people of mixed race who were born because some of the whites married or in some cases raped the slaves they owned. These children of white people were eventually freed and enjoyed a good social status. Some of them even owned a plantation themselves. Below them were the poor whites, which included craftsmen, exiled criminals, etc. And at the bottom were the slaves, who made up the 90% of the island's population. By the end of the 18th century, all of these social classes had something to complain about. People of mixed race complained about not having enough legal rights. Poor whites complained because they had to live in a society where people of color enjoyed a better social status than them. But the slaves were the worst off. They suffered from starvation, malnutrition, were forced to endure backbreaking work days, and they died from infections, injuries, and tropical diseases. All of this destabilized the social order enforced by the French, and it became a good recipe for revolution. On August 22, 1791, groups of slaves rose up to fight their oppressors and soon got support from over 100,000 former slaves and people of mixed race. They killed plantation owners and destroyed their properties. Among the leaders of this revolt was Toussaint Louverture, a former slave. He helped mold the slaves into a disciplined army that could withstand attacks from the French troops. During all of this bloodshed, Spain as well as the British wanted to use this opportunity to weaken the France. The Spanish had consistently supported slave revolts in Saint Domingue. By 1793, they were offering even more support. The British were also at war with France, and they also decided to invade Saint Domingue. And at that point, French military commanders realized that they were definitely going to lose this war if they fought the British, the Spanish, and the slaves all at once. So they decided to free the slaves. When that happened, the leader of the slave rebellion, Louverture, switched sides and helped the French in fighting against the British and Spain. This partnership, however, could not last long. When Napoleon seized power in France, he decided to reclaim the French colony and introduce slavery again to the island. He succeeded in arresting the leader of slave revolt, Louverture, and sent an army of 40,000 French soldiers to reclaim the island of Saint Domingue. Slave leader Louverture died in prison, but his revolution did not die with him. His fellow general Jacques Dessalines took charge of the revolution. As soon as the French troops arrived at the shores of Saint Domingue, they were welcomed by the armed mob of Africans. Slaves unleashed a hell-down upon them with the help of guerrilla warfare. Out of 40,000 French soldiers, only 8,000 made it back to France, and eventually Napoleon had to admit his defeat and concede the island to slaves. On New Year's Day 1804, Haiti became the first black republic when Dessalines renamed the colony and declared its independence. By creating a society in which all people of all color were granted freedom and citizenship, the Haitian Revolution forever transformed the world. It was a central part of the destruction of slavery in the Americas and therefore a crucial moment in the history of democracy, one that laid the foundation for the continuing struggles for human rights everywhere. Number 2. The French Revolution. Before the French Revolution, the people of France were divided into social groups called estates. The first estate included the clergy, meaning the church leaders, the second estate included the nobles, and the third estate included the common people, mostly peasants. Common people like peasants paid most of the taxes, while nobles and church leaders lived luxurious lives and got all the high-ranking jobs. France was under a very rigid feudal system in which a person's social status was determined based on the class he was born in. Elevating a person's social status was next to impossible for common people. If someone was born a peasant, he was very likely to die a peasant. Even the peasants made up over 90% of French society. They had virtually no economic and political power. They had no chance of climbing up the social ladder of feudal France. These factors caused intense anger to build within the peasant class as they started questioning the authority of their king, Louis XVI. They could show this courage because by this time the age of enlightenment had transformed the thoughts of common people throughout the Europe. During the age of enlightenment, philosophers had been questioning and challenging many of the most basic principles of society. And because of the invention of printing press, their thoughts were reaching the common people of Europe. Thoughts of enlightenment thinkers encouraged common people of France to stand up against the monarchy. In the year 1789, the French people began to revolt against the absolute monarchy with an objective to create a republic that would embrace the principle of liberty, equality, and fraternity. The French Revolution completely changed the social and political structure of France. It put an end to feudalism, French monarchy, and took political power from the Catholic Church. It brought new ideas to Europe, including liberty and freedom for the commoners, as well as the abolishment of slavery and the rights of women. Although the revolution ended with the rise of Napoleon and he restored slavery among some other things, the ideas and reforms did not die. These new ideas continued to influence Europe and helped to shape many of Europe's modern-day governments. Number 3. The Chinese Revolution. From 1644 to 1912, China was under the imperial rule of the Qin dynasty. For 2 centuries, the Qin dynasty kept a tight grip over China until it lost a series of wars, faced a strong peasant unrest, and was plagued by political corruption, governmental incompetencies, and an economic disaster due to the lack of silver. All of these factors resulted in the Qin dynasty losing its prominence in Asia. By the early 20th century, every Chinese common man was frustrated with the imperial rule of the Qin dynasty. Nationwide frustrations soon sparked rebellious thoughts among the common citizens. As a result, in the earliest years of the 20th century, all the frustrated people of China came together to form the Revolutionary Alliance to abolish the imperial system. Sun Yat-sen, a politician and physician who is still considered as the father of China, played an instrumental role in the movement. Several revolts were launched, all of which were quashed by the Qin army. But in the fall of 1911, an uprising in Wuchang turned the tide. The Qin dynasty soon realized that it couldn't keep up the fight against revolutionaries, and the Qin court began discussing the possibility of a constitutional monarchy. Even with the promise of reform, the Chinese people did not want to give the Qing dynasty a second chance. So the various Chinese provinces declared their allegiance to the Revolutionary Alliance. Representatives of the provinces gathered for the first National Assembly, where they elected Sun Yat-sen as the provisional president of the new Republic of China. In 1912, the emperor stepped down from the throne, bringing an end to the imperial system and the centuries-long rule of the Qin dynasty. The revolution of the 1911 was a critical moment in Chinese history because of how it paved the way for the Chinese Communist Revolution in 1949, an uprising that established the People's Republic of China under the rule of Mao Zedong. The Russian Revolution. Just like China, Russia was also ruled by a single dynasty for 300 years. In Russia, they used to call their emperor Tsar. The Tsar had total power in Russia. He commanded the army, owned much of the land, and even controlled the church. Before the Russian Revolution, life for the working class people and the peasants was very difficult. They worked for little pay, often went without food, and were exposed to dangerous working conditions. The elite class treated the peasants like slaves, giving them few rights under the law and treating them almost like animals. Even after living under such harsh circumstances, Russian people still loved and revered their emperor Tsar Nicholas II. Poor Russians thought that the Tsar was on their side, and they blamed the government of aristocrats and elites for their troubles. On January 22, 1905, a major event unfolded that sparked the fire of revolution among the common Russians. A large number of workers marched towards the Tsar's palace in order to present a petition for better working conditions. Those poor Russians thought that their beloved Tsar loves them, and yet Tsar Nicholas II responded by opening fire on their peaceful march. Many workers were either killed or injured. In the Russian history, this day is called the Bloody Sunday. After the shootings, delusional Russians realized that the Tsar was not their friend. He was just another blood-sucking aristocrat who prioritized profit over everything else. And yet the Tsar failed at that too. The Russian Empire's economy was in shambles. If that was not enough, Tsar decided to join hands with Germany in World War I. I don't know how people like him get to be the king. That's why I always say imperialism and nepotism sucks. Anyway, the Tsar decided to form a huge army by forcing working class and peasant men to join. But guess what? His grand army of working class and peasants was not trained and lacked necessary equipment. Many of them were sent into battle without shoes, food, and even weapons. Over the next 3 years, nearly 2 million Russian soldiers were killed in battle and nearly another 5 million were wounded. From exploiting working class people to sending them to die in a war, every act of Tsar Nicholas II made him the public enemy number one. The Russian people were pissed and frustrated with him, and even my little sister knows what happens when common people are pissed. Hey Manisha, what happens when common people get frustrated with their rulers?
Revolution?
Yeah, that's right. In early 1917, the revolution began when a number of workers decided to go on a strike. During the strike, workers discussed politics, miserable working conditions, and the failing economy of their country. Soon the strike evolved into a riot. To suppress the riot, the Tsar once again ordered his soldiers to open fire on people. This time, however, soldiers had had enough of the Tsar's brutality and they refused to open fire on the Russian people. Guess what? Even they were not happy about Tsar's decision of sending them to fight World War I and getting a lot of soldiers killed. When his own army turned against him, the Tsar had no option but to give up his throne. The Russian Revolution was not as simple as replacing the old imperial system with the new government. It was a complicated one, which involved a lot of political entities and leaders that were of different ideologies. After the Tsar left his throne, over the next several months, the new Russian government was run by two political parties: the Petrograd Soviets, who represented the workers and soldiers, and the provisional government, the traditional government without Tsar. But one of the factions of the Petrograd Soviets was not happy about this arrangement. They were called Bolsheviks, and they strongly resented old aristocrats and elites. Bolsheviks were led by Vladimir Lenin and believed that the new Russian government should be a communist government. In October of 1917, Lenin took full control of the government in what is called the Bolshevik Revolution. And that's how Russia became the first ever communist country in the world. Bolsheviks were not as easygoing as the Petrograd Soviets. They ruthlessly dealt with Russia's elite class and with anyone who came in their way. They wanted to punish everyone who was accused of exploiting the working class people. Bolsheviks even executed Tsar Nicholas and his entire family in 1918. Lenin championed a new Soviet government ruled not by capitalists but by a collective of peasants, laborers and soldiers. After the revolution, Russia exited World War I by signing a peace treaty with Germany. The new government took control of all industry and transformed the Russian economy from a rural one to an industrial one. It also seized farmland from landholders and distributed it among the peasants. Women were given equal rights to those of men, and religion was banned from many aspects of society. Despite all of Lenin's efforts, the revolution was not widely embraced outside Petrograd by the remaining imperial loyalists. For 5 years, civil war consumed Russia, ultimately resulting in a victory for Lenin, and the new country was called the USSR, United Soviet Socialist Republic. Number 5. The American Revolution. From 1756 to 1763, Britain and France fought a series of battles with each other. This war between them, that is known as the 7 Years' War, resulted in Britain's victory over France. Britain won the war, but it had to bear a lot of economic losses. To recover those losses, the British Parliament decided to impose heavy taxes on their American colonies with the introduction of the Stamp Act. American colonists were probably okay with paying the taxes, but they had one problem. They had no representation in the British Parliament. They wanted American representatives to be in a parliament that passed laws and imposed taxes on them. Americans were like, without giving us proper representation, how can the British Parliament keep imposing heavy taxes on us? This resentment led American colonies to rebel against the British. There were several British colonies in the Americas, out of which only 13 ended up rebelling against the British. First, there were protests and arguments, then some small clashes between the colonists and the local British army. But things just got worse and worse over the course of years, and soon the colonies and Great Britain found themselves at war. On one hand, war broke out in 1775 between the king's forces and colonies. On the other hand, all of the colonies came together and in an effort to fight united against the British Crown, created the First Continental Congress. This Congress contained elected representatives from all the rebelling colonies. In 1776, the Second Continental Congress declared the independence of the United States from Great Britain. However, the violence and war did not stop there. It continued for several years until George Washington's troops, with the help of the French army, won a decisive victory over the British at the Battle of Yorktown in 1781. The conflict officially concluded 2 years later with the 1783 Treaty of Paris, in which the British abandoned all claims in the US. The new government of the United States was different from the government of the colonist homeland Great Britain. They decided that they didn't want to be ruled by a king anymore. They wanted a democratic government that was ruled by the people. On this channel, you get to enjoy a wide variety of content where we pull ideas from various fields of knowledge. Subscribe to keep watching content that brings together interesting ideas and information at one place. Also, do check some of my older videos. That's enough for today. See you in the next video.